All right, welcome everybody to our logic course. We're going to be using the 13th edition of Patrick J. Hurley and Laurie Watson's Concise Introduction to Logic. The MindTap program is new with a lot of added features, and Hurley himself does a lot of little lectures you can get on there and explore. And I can add videos anytime during the semester. So anytime you're confused on a particular subject in the homework problems, let me know. I can just whip out a video going over problems. Especially I can do a million proofs when we get to chapter 7 and chapter 8. We can do proof after proof after proof, and I'll just send it to you and you can go over them. Sound good? All right, did everybody get into MindTap? I know this is a pain, it's weird. We have no real textbook, so the loose leaf textbook is optional. So everything's online. You have the online textbook when you register with MindTap. So go to the announcements or the website and the email. I think under syllabus I have all these instructions. You have a 2-week free trial. So just sign on in there and do work. And then if you have to drop, then you don't have to pay anything. So read all this and email me if you have problems, or email the discussion board. Send your classmates questions on the discussion board and talk about your problems together, and always email me as well. Don't get frustrated. We have a lot of resources. All right. I'll do some general philosophy things, so you can actually watch the first 5 minutes of this and then just turn it off if you want, and just go to the book, do the exercises, go to Aplia, and so on. Basically, for each section, except for chapter 3, when we do informal arguments, which we'll do together back on the discussion board, and with YouTube lecture, we'll basically skip the text. The rest of the class, you'll read the section in the textbook. Optional to watch my video over the class PowerPoint, which you would get in a real class, and then do the practice MindTap practice problems for 0 points. And then go down and do the Aplia 1.1 questions. You'll have 3 attempts at the Aplia to ace all of those homework questions. So you have 3 attempts all semester for all of our homework assignments. But you'll only be graded on the Aplia problems, not the MindTap problems. Once you get in there and see how this works, hopefully it'll work out. If you're confused, email me, and I can actually do an active presenter video over MindTap to show you how to do this stuff. All right. Okay, what we're going to do in this text, we're going to review the basics in philosophy. So hopefully you've watched the YouTube video and looked at the PowerPoint lecture, which I would do the first class on the 4 branches of philosophy, how logic relates to all of it, how we use logic all day long, whether we know it or not. And the question is whether or not we're good logicians. Here's a great logician right in the middle of the screen here, Dr. Gregory Johnson. He teaches for Mississippi State University. He's the author of the new MIT Press book, Argument Inference, which I used in my online classes at the University of Cincinnati Claremont College, and hope to use again. But I would definitely buy that book. It's pretty cheap. And after this course for inductive inference. All right, this is Meteor agrees. All right, 4 major parts of philosophy, quick review. Pause it and see if you can define each of these things. And try to give us an example of a question in each branch. All right, if you have problems, you might want to go back. All right, epistemology. What were the 3 types of knowledge we talked about? That's right, propositional, acquaintance, and know-how. What's propositional knowledge? This is what you read about in a textbook. So in the PowerPoint I gave the example of I read the Haynes manual of how to change my brakes on my Acura Integra. But until I actually ripped off those wheels and got down to work, I was never acquainted with what it's like to change brakes and rotors. And I didn't have know-how after the first one, but after the 4th one, I'm like, you know what? I know how to do this. And we can always improve in our know-how and skill set. After 10,000 hours, you can become an expert. All right, try this out on your friends. Think about it. Okay, chapter 1 is good because Why did we talk about philosophy being a second-order discipline? That's right, because your philosophical presuppositions serve to launch a whole academic enterprise. Okay? So, I didn't give you any examples, did I? So, for example, in the philosophy of science, what philosophical presuppositions do you have to assume to get off the ground? You have to assume that there is the external world exists. Now, some people believe in Maya that the external world is an illusion, and so science is just impossible because we're just studying our minds or our hallucinations. Okay? You also have to believe that language and our concepts can accurately describe. Now, this isn't a given. When we talk about quarks and the Higgs boson particle, or we talk about whatever concept in science, but maybe we're like a little kid describing an NFL game. If a 3-year-old describes what's going on in the NFL, she's not going to be able to have the language or concepts to describe what an interception is, and so on. So maybe that's like all humans are. We're just looking at a big NFL game in the sky and uttering gibberish. All right? So with regards to logic, the possibility of induction. Now, some people believe that reasoning is impossible. Depends on whether you believe in the free will of the mind, whether or not our beliefs and thoughts can be related with logical relations or not, and so on. So, the knowability of the external world. Some people believe that we're trapped inside our heads, and so we're just either programmed by evolution, naturalistic evolution, no God, and we just see what we see. Maybe that produces some truth. Maybe we can know true things about the external world, maybe we can't. But that's a philosophical question. Okay. Existence of numbers in mathematics. Math, well, Pythagoras thought, the universe was written in the language of mathematics. Most sciences use numbers in mathematics all the time. Existence of logic and logical relations. Are these things real? Do they exist? We need all these things to do science. Okay? Uniformity of nature. If we're going to study natural laws and describe things, then we have to assume that the periodic table is the same on Earth as it is on Mars and so on. So, but this is up for grabs. All right, I could go on, but a lot of these philosophical presuppositions these are actually controversial, whether you believe it or not. Okay? Email me if you want to talk about it. But there we go. All right. Why would history depend upon philosophy to get off the ground? If you think about this, we've got to know certain things. Can we know things about the external world? Can we trust testimony? And so on. All right. 1.1, basic concepts. So logic, the science that evaluates arguments. I'm just going to read from Hurley. This first paragraph, I like it. Logic may be defined as the organized body of knowledge or science that evaluates arguments. All of us encounter arguments in our day-to-day experience. We read them in books and newspapers, hear them on television, and formulate them when communicating with friends and associates. The aim of logic is to develop a system of methods and principles that we may use as criteria for evaluating the arguments of others and as guides in constructing arguments of our own. Among the benefits to be expected from the study of logic is an increase in confidence that we are making sense when we criticize the arguments of others and when we advance the arguments of our own. All right, What in the world is an argument? Is it screaming at somebody? No, sir. I quote again from Hurley. An argument in its simplest form is a group of statements, one or more of which the premises are claimed to provide support for or reasons to believe one of the others. The conclusion. All right? So, that's simply it. And this is how we're going to write arguments. P1 for premise 1, P2 for premise 2, P3 for premise 3, and so on. Maybe there's an infinite number of premises. And then C, conclusion. All right? So practice this. An argument is a group of statements, one or more of which the premises are claimed to provide support for or reasons to believe one of the others. The conclusion. All right. So, let me continue reading. Every argument may be placed in either of two basic groups, those in which the premises really do support the conclusion, and those in which they do not, even though they are claimed to. The former are said to be good arguments, at least to that extent, and latter, bad arguments. The purpose of logic as the science that evaluates arguments is thus to develop methods and techniques that allow us to distinguish good arguments from bad. Sound good? Okay. Now, a statement, we're going to define, where's that slide? Come on, man. All right. Okay, statement. So a statement is a sentence that is either true or false. Okay? So a declaratory sentence like the example in the book, chocolate truffles are loaded with calories. Yoda is a Yoda. Okay, what is Yoda? How about Chewbacca is a Wookiee? And so on. All right? Propositions are different. Or the content, I think this is non-physical. My buddies disagreed. So, statements and sentences are in particular languages. The English sentence, so you could express the same proposition in many different sentences in different languages. That's why propositions represent the content in the sentences. Statements are types of sentences that are declarative. The statement is a sentence that is either true or false. Declarative sentence or sentence component that could stand as a declarative sentence. All right? So jump on 1.1, read, you see a bunch of lists. And we can distinguish questions from proposals, from suggestions, from commands to exclamations. And you'll have questions on all these things. Okay? All right. This makes sense. Now, another thing you're going to be tested on are premise indicators and conclusion indicators. So just jump on the list there and just start looking at these things. Once you start to see these words, you're like, okay, I get it. These are conclusion indicators. These are premise indicators. So you might just want to memorize these lists right here and so on in premise 1. Okay? All right, so here's a typical structure of an argument. You only need one premise and a conclusion for an argument. You don't need more than one premise. But this particular argument has 4 premises: premise 1, premise 2, premise 3, premise 4, conclusion. And yeah, the premises include the evidence and for the conclusion. All right. There I am in front of Aristotle's Lyceum in Athens, Greece, 2016. I like this little bit, note on the history of logic. I would read this because it introduces you to Aristotle, Chrysippus, Galen, Peter Abelard, Peter Spain, Occam, Leibniz, and so on. Whitehead and Russell, But just read over this, look at these names, and you'll see these in the rest of the textbook. What I like about Hurley, he'll mention one of these logicians in every chapter, sometimes in every section in a chapter, where we get a little historical snippet. All right? So, Aristotle, lots of good little things on him if you want to check it out. All right, we're going to practice. Why in the world does this have there? Okay. So yeah, if you need more exercise, I can go over some. Just let me know. All right. Well, let's do some review questions. The purpose of the premise or premises is to set forth the reasons or evidence given in support of the conclusion. True or false? Some arguments have more than conclusion. True or false? All arguments must have more than one premise. True or false? The words therefore, hence, so, since, and thus are all conclusion indicators. The words for, because, as, and for the reason that are all premise indicators. All right. Write down your answers. Pause it. Here are the answers. Boom. If you have questions about these, let me know. But I think we hit all these things. All arguments must have more than one premise. Number 3, that's obviously false because you can just have one premise, one conclusion. Some arguments have more than one conclusion. That's false. All right, 6 through 10, pause it. Write down your answers, and I'll show you the answers in a second. In the strict sense of the terms, inference and argument have exactly the same meaning. That's in your textbook, 1.1. 7, in most but not all arguments that lack indicator words, the conclusion is the first statement. 8, any sentence that is either true or false, it's a statement. 9, every statement has a truth value. 10, Aristotle is a person usually credited with being the father of logic. Okay. So, in the strict sense of the terms, inference and argument have exactly the same meaning. That's false. As Hurley says here, closely related to the concepts of argument and statement are those of inference and proposition. An inference, in the narrow sense of the term, is the reasoning process expressed by an argument. In the broad sense of the term, inference is used interchangeably with argument. But in the strict sense, you want to infer from one premise, their conclusion, so on. All right? So inference is a lot tinier, a little relation in an argument. 7, in most but not all arguments that lack indicator words, the conclusion in the first statement, that's usually true. So, Hurley gives us some good things here. So some arguments have no indicators. With these, the reader listener must ask such questions as, what single statement is claimed implicitly to follow from the others? What is the arguer trying to prove? What is the main point of the passage? All right? The answer to those questions should point to the conclusion. Okay? So, what is this? Any sentence that is either true or false is a statement. True. Every statement has a truth value. True. 10, Aristotle is a person usually credited with being the father of logic. Yes, he lived in the 4th century BC. He was a student of Plato. Aristotle was a tutor of Alexander the Great. And, yeah. All right, practice problems from the book. Let's look at these. 1.1. Instructions. Each of the following passages contains a single argument. Using the letters P and C, identify the premises and conclusion of each argument, writing premises first and conclusion last. List the premises in order in which they make the most sense, usually in order in which they occur, and write both premises and conclusion in the form of separate declarative sentences. Indicator words may be eliminated once premises and conclusion have been appropriately labeled. Okay. All right. Thomas Aquinas, 13th century Italian philosopher, very interesting story. He saved, well, that's a good thing or a bad thing, you be the judge, intellectually, Christianity. See, Islamic philosophers had showed how Aristotle could be made compatible with Islamic philosophy, and so Aquinas showed how Aristotle, quote unquote, the philosopher, how his philosophy could be compatible with Christianity. All right. He said this in the Summa Theologica: to every existing thing God wills some good. Hence, since to love anything is nothing else than to will good to that thing, it is manifest or obvious that God loves everything that exists. All right, pause this. What's the premise? Are there multiple premises? What's the conclusion? Pause it, and then I'm flipping the slide. Here's the answer. Premise 1, to every existing thing, God wills some good. Premise 2, to love anything is nothing else than to will good to that thing. Conclusion, we can infer from premise 1 and premise 2. It is manifest that God loves everything that exists, or it is evident that God loves everything that exists. All right. If you have questions on this, email me. Something's not quite right. We'll do 15. Margaret Sanger and her book Family Limitations. Note on Sanger, she was founded American Birth Control Society. I think that was what it was called in 1921. That was the precursor to Planned Parenthood. And yeah, she was a big proponent of sexual freedom and planned pregnancies. That's why she's a big fan of birth control. But she was also a big proponent of infanticide and eugenics and eliminating disabled people and African Americans from society. So there you have it. We don't talk about that. All right. She said this: women of the working class, especially wage workers, should not have more than 2 children at most. The average working man can support no more, and the average working woman can take care of no more in decent fashion. Pause it. Find the premise, find the conclusion. Maybe there's multiple premises. You be the judge. Yeah, she was in favor of, like, people registering, I think, and having a right to reproduce, and so on. She was out there. All right. Don't cheat. Pause it. You guys done? All right, then flip it. Premise 1, the average working man can support no more than 2 children. Premise 2, the average working woman can take care of no more than 2 children in decent fashion. Therefore, we can infer from this that women in the working class, especially wage workers, should not have more than 2 children at most. All right. Whether it's a good argument or bad argument, weak argument or strong argument, you be the judge. I'm not. Same with 18. Good old Aristotle. Again, he said this in Nicomachean Ethics, a very controversial argument. Every art and every inquiry, and similarly every action and pursuit, is thought to aim at some good. Sorry. Come on, man. Is thought to aim at some good. And for this reason, the good has rightly been declared to be that at which all things aim. Pause it. Let us know the premise, conclusion, and so on. All right, we have one premise and one conclusion in this argument. Every art and every inquiry, and similarly every action and pursuit, is thought to aim at some good. Therefore, we can conclude the good has been rightly declared to be that at which all things aim. All right. I could go on. We did the part 4, true or false. Probably should have done definitions. I'll do more for 1.2. But I think this should be fairly easy. All right. So jump on MindTap, do the practice problems. Email me if you need help. I can slap another video with more cases, example. I can go to MindTap and even do those. I encourage you guys to post study times and do work together. I know a lot of you guys are not on campus or in town, so that's impossible. Maybe you can Skype. It's up to you. So the most fun last spring semester was meeting you guys in the union and working with 2 or 3 of you or 5 of you and doing proofs, especially chapter 7 and 8. That was awesome. I would totally miss that because I love helping you guys. Yeah, philosophy is best done with others. Don't get frustrated in this class. Email me 10 times a day if you have to. If you're frustrated, somebody else is. So we want to build a community online and yeah, learn this stuff together. My buddy Greg Johnson, guess what's happening tomorrow? Full eclipse right there, and that's on the cover of his book. Yes, this is a shameless pitch for Gregory Johnson's book. Check it out. Also, the rest of your life, not just for this class, I encourage you guys to use the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy online. Aristotle's Logic, here's the link there. Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Lots of great stuff on there. Bounce around between those and read some articles. Email me if you have questions, and so on. All right, that's the end of the show. Don't get frustrated. Email me. You have 3 attempts at every homework, and that's it. All right. Bye. See you later.